In the previous episode, we programmed the functions for stop loss, take profit, trailing stop, and we changed the architecture of our robot. Hi, I am the Quant. In this episode, we are going to create the percentage of risk per trade, and we are going to transform the architecture of our robot so it can handle entries and exits either on bar or on tick, which will generate a high-frequency trading method. Let's get started. First, go to your cTrader robot, the plug-and-play cbot. In this code, you can see that the only way to make an entry decision is on bar closed. We are going to change that. We will go to the top of the code and add a parameter we have never seen before. We have already used integers, doubles, strings, and booleans. Today, we are going to add a new type, an enumeration. Let me show you. I copy and paste a parameter, and I call it bar tick entry. Inside the parentheses, I give it the name that will be displayed in the robot, and here I assign its type. I am going to call this type enum bar tick. We can see there is a problem. It is underlined in red. That is because this type is not defined yet. So we define it. We write public enum bar tick, open curly bracket, on bar, on tick, close curly bracket. Now the red underline is gone. Next, I add the default value. Enum bar tick equals on bar. You see, it is exactly the enumeration that we just created. Let us go into the robot and see how it looks. A drop-down menu has now appeared in our robot, and we can choose the parameter we want to assign to it. On bar or on tick, exactly like in the enumeration we created. Now that we have the parameter, we add the onTicks function. We could simply copy and paste the code and say, if enum bar tick entry equals bar or equals tick, then we choose one or the other. But that is not the right way to do it. So I am going to show you the right way. In a robot, especially for backtests and optimizations, the execution time increases a lot when onTick is called. The robot has to process every single tick, one by one. That is a lot of work we ask from it. That is why we need to carefully separate what we ask the robot to do in the tick part and what we ask it to do in the bar part. Let me show you. We simply add a new function called process logic. And we give it a parameter of type enum bar tick that we will call bar or tick. Now that this function is created, we can remove the code from on bar closed and move it into process logic with a condition. If the parameter of our function is equal to bar tick entry, then we execute the code. To finish, it is very simple. We call the process logic function inside on bar and inside on tick, and we pass it the enumeration parameter we created. On bar, on tick. Now we can see that our code is clean and easy to understand. We start with on bars and on ticks, and our process logic will call the getSignal function depending on the enumeration. Now let's take a look at what happens with our robot. I sped up the video, but you need to know that a backtest on bar usually takes a few seconds, while this one took 4 minutes, and you will understand why. As we can see, there are thousands of positions still open. Let's check how many trades were taken in total over 1 month. 100,232. With 20 trading days per month, that is about 5,000 trades per day. This is what we call high-frequency trading. For this strategy, in its current state, I absolutely do not recommend using it as is. But yes, this behavior is a real trading method. Now, we are going to add the risk percent. Just like we did earlier, we are going to add another enumeration. This time, we will call it amount type. In this enumeration, we will include two options: percent risk and lots. Next, to make sure the code is easy to read, we rename the parameter volume in lots and simply call it value. Now, we are going to create the function that allows us to differentiate between calculating a lot or calculating a percent-based amount. We will call this function getAmount, and it does not require any parameters. The conditions are simple. If amount type is equal to percent risk, then we return. Symbol dot volume for fixed risk, open parenthesis account dot equity multiplied by risk value divided by 100. Stop loss, rounding mode dot up close parenthesis. Otherwise, we simply return value. Now that our function is done, we need to call it inside our open function. To do that, we create a variable called tradeAmount and set it equal to our getAmount function. Then our volume parameter becomes tradeAmount. Now that the old volume is no longer used, we can remove it from the function and from everywhere in the code. By the way, volume in units can also be deleted. Okay, let us go and look at the result. To start, we will test on a demo account with $10,000 and a risk of 1%, which means $100. We can see that the maximum stop-loss amount is indeed around $100. I disable close on opposite to check more clearly. There we go. Every trade is correctly set to $100. I showed you this function because it is a way to create exponential gains when you have a strategy that works. Look, I will now show you what happens if I increase the risk percentage. Be careful. Anyone who trades knows that this method is absolutely forbidden. The recommended maximum risk per day is 2% for any trader who cares about safety. I will let you watch the test. That is all for this episode. If you have not done it yet, make sure to subscribe, and if you want to go further, join us on Discord. In the next episode, we will see how to add entry filters, the spread, the maximum number of positions, an hour range where trading is allowed, and a selection of trading days.